Incredible love story. Millionaire discovers unexpected connection with late bridesmaid at wedding. Jake Thompson stood before the ornate mirror, a flawless reflection of affluence and expectation. The polished surfaces glinted under the morning light cascading through the mansion's grand windows, illuminating the perfect suit crafted for today's high society wedding. Adjusting his tie, Jake's fingers trembled slightly, not from excitement, but from a gnawing unease that sank deep. Today marked a union with Jessica, an embodiment of social perfection and status. Yet as he stared into his own eyes, he realized the reflection didn't align with the joy he was supposed to feel. It highlighted a lonely path paved with sacrifice. Long hours spent chasing the elusive success had come at a cost. Relationships strained, friendships faded, time irretrievably lost. It was a hollow ambition, one that had spiraled into an unfamiliar loneliness wrapped in silk and champagne. The laughter echoing through the grand hall sounded so distant, a reminder of a world he had meticulously crafted but couldn't truly belong to. It felt like a tomb adorned with golden trinkets, vibrating with the joy of others while his heart ached for something more. As he tightened his grip on the tie, a fragment of memory flickered. Emily Carter, long gone but never forgotten. A late bridesmaid who lifted spirits with her humble charm, she had always been a reminder that wealth wasn't everything. Her absence loomed large today, even among the glitz. Just then, a voice pulled him from reverie. The aunt of Emily was approaching, introducing a niece he had never met. The name, Ashley, ignited curiosity beneath his skin. Could this stranger hold a piece of the past that still tugged at his heart? Their conversation began lightheartedly, but as they spoke, Jake felt an undeniable connection. Ashley's stories resonated. She was a talented artist, struggling yet persistent, embodying a rawness he had once cherished in life. The contrast magnified with every laugh they shared, every honest confession. While his world whirled in luxury and expectation, hers was grounded in authenticity and resilience. The warmth in her expressions kindled a flicker of hope in Jake's chest, but it brought along burgeoning conflict. Should he risk everything he built for this budding connection or remain the obedient millionaire expected to uphold societal expectations? Before they could delve deeper, laughter erupted nearby, signaling the start of the ceremony. As the toasts filled the air, buried family secrets began surfacing. Tension simmered with each clink of glass, threatening to shatter his perfect facade. Anxiety churned within him, heightening with the realization that even amidst celebratory chaos, whispers hinted at a legacy he had thought immune to scrutiny. Everything he believed about his identity and status began to fray at the edges. Suddenly, someone shouted across the ballroom, revealing a hypocrisy buried deep within the Thompson lineage, a scandal that could fracture his family. Panic set in, his pulse quickening as he tried to maintain composure, all while Ashley's eyes flickered over to him. The tightness in his chest twisted painfully. The pull toward her was magnetic, yet the weight of expectation felt like chains on his soul. Caught in this emotional storm, he locked eyes with Ashley across the room. In that fleeting moment, the world spun away, reducing their surroundings to a blur of expectations and memories. A longing surged within him, an intoxicating mix of fear and desire. A choice loomed on the horizon, a potential redefinition of happiness or the chance to uphold a gilded facade. Would he choose to embrace love born of authenticity, or would he resign himself to a life defined by wealth? The stakes had never been higher, and Jake's heart raced. Could love truly transcend expectations, or was he destined to lose everything for a fleeting possibility? Jake's heart raced as his surroundings morphed into a chaotic blur, the laughter and clinking glasses fading into an indistinct hum. Every instinct screamed for him to flee, to escape the weight of expectations and the stifling authenticity of his world. He felt trapped between two lives, one that glittered with superficial allure and another rooted in something genuine and alive. The wedding ceremony droned on, yet his focus remained anchored to Ashley, who stood across the ballroom. She seemed untouched by the cascading torrent of wealth and status swirling around him. Her laughter bubbled over as she interacted with other guests, unguarded and effervescent. It was a stark contrast to the rehearsed smiles and obligatory greetings exchanged at events like this one. There was honesty in her demeanor that made him question the very foundation of what he had accepted as normal. He didn't want to minimize the significance of the celebration, but he felt like an intruder in his own life. The vows being exchanged reminded him of promises he made, those made not just to Jessica but to himself, to uphold the family legacy. Yet, the auspicious words fell flat against the newfound reality he was grappling with. Each heartbeat thumped with urgency, urging him to reassess everything he had thought to be true. As the ceremony progressed, a nagging voice squirmed in his mind. How could he commit himself to a future that felt like a performance? He had worked tirelessly to construct a life filled with prestige and comfort, yet it now stood like a fragile facade, threatened by the glimmer of a deeper, more meaningful existence. Visions of Emily flickered in his thoughts, memories of her radiating kindness serving as a stark reminder of a more profound connection he craved. Would he dare to step outside the defined contours of his life? The thought rippled through him, sparking a plan to reach out to Ashley, to explore the cool waters of honesty. But the risk loomed large. Was he prepared to confront the fallout that might ensue? His association with Jessica clung to him like a shadow, a reminder of the obligations he could neither shake nor dismiss. Steeling himself against the tide of doubt, he moved toward Ashley as the ceremony drew to a close. She caught sight of him, a vibrant smile spreading across her face, illuminating his internal conflict with warmth. That smile ignited something deep within him, a sense of longing intertwined with fear. What if she saw right through his polished exterior? What if she couldn't reconcile the person he was with the one he wanted to be? Jake. Her voice rang out, a melody that seemed to pull him from the depths of his dilemma. You were so quiet during the ceremony. I thought you might take up a second career as a statue. He laughed, the sound escaping his lips before he could harness it. The ease of their interaction acted as a balm, but beneath its surface lay the tumult of deeper significance. I was just lost in thought, he admitted, wrestling with how much to reveal, knowing full well that honesty could fracture the very structure of his life. Ashley tilted her head slightly, an eyebrow raised inquisitively. About the marriage? You have every right to ponder that. The casual weight of her statement lodged into him like a splinter. It was a straightforward observation, yet it carried the force of an unrecognized truth. The dismantling of his identity was underway, and the walls he had built were crumbling around him. He dared not answer her directly. Instead, he offered a tentative smile. As the celebratory atmosphere began to shift into farewell festivities, the undercurrents of their conversation felt potent. He needed to confront the choices he was making. Why was he standing here, yearning for a connection that made his heart soar but also threatened his carefully crafted image? Could he risk it all for something real, or would he allow this moment to slip away like sand through his fingers? In that moment, a decision loomed. A chance to reclaim his happiness stood tantalizingly close. But to do so would require breaking free from expectations that had defined him for years. The room spun with possibilities, and Jake's heart thundered at the precipice of a new chapter. Would he embrace this newfound truth, or remain shackled to his old life? As his thoughts churned with uncertainty, the answer slipped further out of reach. But he knew whether through Ashley or a greater destiny something irrevocable was about to shift in his world. The fleeting nature of laughter and the warm glow of lights receded into the distance as Jake and Ashley found themselves standing side by side, surrounded by departing guests. He stole a moment to appreciate her spirit. There was a spark in her eyes that radiated optimism, setting her apart from the crowd of calculated conversations that whirled around them. Yet this proximity to her felt like a double-edged sword. The intoxicating allure of her authenticity clashed violently with the world he had painstakingly built, pulling at the strings of his carefully curated existence. Do you think it's wrong to want more from life than what's expected? Jake blurted out, the question tumbling from his lips before he could temper it with cautious optimism. He felt exposed, vulnerable, but oddly liberated by the chance to articulate his turmoil. Ashley paused, clearly taken aback by his sudden introspection. Her expression softened, and Jake watched as layers of misunderstanding began to peel away. I think it depends on who you ask, she replied slowly, her gaze introspective. Some people are content with the status quo, while others— she hesitated, searching for the concept just beyond her fingertips. Others feel like there's a whole world waiting for them to explore. As she spoke, he felt hope swelling within him, a stirring as invigorating and turbulent as a tidal wave crashing on shores of certainty. Had he really been content all along, or merely comforted by familiarity? The universe seemed to tilt on its axis with that question, and he could almost hear the winds of change whispering through the room. What if, he continued, his voice low but determined, I want to break free from everything I've been told I should want. What if this, he gestured to the ballroom that encapsulated everything he had known, isn't really me? Ashley's smile faded slightly, the reality of his words cutting deeper than he intended. That's a risk, Jake. A dangerous one, she said softly, her eyes narrowing like a lighthouse's beam cutting through fog. It's not just about you. The people you're tied to, Jessica, he interrupted, the name hanging heavy in the air between them. It felt like an anchor, dragging him down. He took a shuddering breath, deliberate and slow. I've spent so long pretending, and I don't know how to reconcile my life with that truth. The tension mounted, palpable and electric. There was an understanding shaping between them, one that transcended the superficial connections he had been navigating his whole life. What do you want, Jake? Ashley challenged, her tone edged with an urgency that sparked something inside him, an ember flaring to life. He stepped closer, compelled not just by his affection for her, but by a desperate need for clarity. I want to know what it feels like to be unguarded, to let someone in. To not pretend. Each word tasted foreign on his tongue, yet liberating. She hesitated, studying him with profound focus. Breaking away from expectations is never easy. You'll face people's disappointment and judgment. But if you want something real, something fulfilling, it might be the hardest decision you've ever faced. His heart reverberated with the notion. Could he fight against the torrent of his life and emerge on the other side? Flashes of doubt creased over his resolve, the fear of consequence underlying his eagerness. Yet deep down, the yearning for authenticity eclipsed those fears. He was ready to confront them. Then I'll have to be prepared, he said resolutely, with an unshakable determination emerging from the shadows of uncertainty. For all of it, the judgment, the repercussions. He glanced at Ashley, whose unwavering gaze anchored him. For the connection I crave. As they shared a moment suspended in time, Jake suddenly sensed the weight of footsteps drawing near, familiar voices echoing reminders of his obligations. Reality encroached upon this fragile exchange. The warmth of possibilities began to dissipate, leaving behind a lingering tension, a reminder of how precarious his situation remained. Will you be here when I decide? He asked, the question hanging in the air like a challenge. Ashley smiled softly, but there was something cautious in her expression. I believe we are all on our paths, Jake. But only you can decide which way to go. As he stepped back, the walls of his life seemed to loom larger, each familiar face illuminating the choices that had led him here. He stood on the brink, wavering between liberation and the comfort of the known. But despite the fear etching its way into his core, the door to freedom was wide open. Determined to step through it, a rush of adrenaline surged through him. Jake could almost hear the echoes of his life calling, challenging him to chart his own course. It was time to ignite the spark and illuminate the darkness ahead. The moment of truth beckoned. He had to decide, would he find the courage to embrace it? The moment Jake stepped back into the hall, the chatter and laughter of the departing guests wrapped around him like a suffocating blanket. He felt the weight of expectation pressing down, each familiar face a reminder of the life he was desperate to escape. The realization dawned: he was standing at a crossroads, two paths laid bare before him, both shrouded in their own uncertainties. As he navigated through the throngs of guests, small talk became a mantra he repeated effortlessly, even as his mind screamed for authenticity. Jessica's laughter echoed in his ears, a haunting reminder of the life they had meticulously crafted together. Yet, in that sound lay the bitter taste of compromise, the hollow ring of joy never experienced fully. With every exchange, each polite smile that masked true feelings, the chasm between who he was and who he pretended to be widened until it was a roaring void. Jake! A voice called out, pulling him from his spiral of thoughts. It was Mark, his business partner. Glad to see you. We've got a meeting with a potential investor next week. Right, the investor, Jake murmured, his voice distant. Mark's expression shifted, noting the distraction in Jake's eyes. Everything all right? You seem a bit off tonight. Just thinking. The admission felt like admitting defeat. How could he explain the storm raging within him when the unending chase for success consumed everyone around him? He felt isolated even amongst the crowd, like standing in the eye of a hurricane of contradiction. Don't let this wedding vibe get you down. You know how these events can be, Mark said with a hearty clap on Jake's shoulder. We might need to ramp up our pitch a bit. Investors are skittish given the market right now. Sure, the words tumbled out of Jake's mouth, but they sounded hollow. His inward journey had unfurled a new vision of himself that didn't quite fit the slick business persona he'd cultivated. He excused himself, seeking an exit from the interactions that felt less like connection and more like a suffocating cloud. The cool air outside embraced him as he stepped onto a balcony, the stars twinkling with a promise of possibilities. Jake leaned against the railing, steadying his breathing. Was it enough to simply acknowledge that he wanted more, or did he have to act on it? The questions circled, like predators sensing their prey. The thought of throwing everything away, the career blockades, and the circumspect reputation, was intoxicating yet terrifying. He felt the weight of Ashley's words return. Breaking away from expectations is never easy. Yet, wasn't he living beneath those expectations a prison of its own? Moments of sincerity with Ashley stoked an inner fire. Perhaps there were ways to carve a path through this chaos. It was time to take any step towards something real. Tonight's event had become a catalyst, one that might just propel him into a future he hadn't dared envision before. His phone buzzed, snapping him back to reality. A message from Jessica appeared, an innocuous inquiry about an upcoming work event. There it was, the tether to his current life. But instead of the familiar twinge of obligation, he felt a stirring of anger intertwined with remorse. Why was he afraid? Jake's finger hovered over the screen, hesitating. Were their moments together built on true bonds, or merely convenience to sustain a romantic facade? He contemplated the last time he felt genuinely happy. Was it with Jessica, or was it lingering in exchanges with Ashley? The answer gnawed him, and as clarity washed over him, Jake felt a pulse of resolute energy. He had to face the choices laid before him, head on. Just as he hit send, the balcony door burst open, revealing Ashley, breathless yet composed. She stopped short, the surprise washing over her face, almost like she had stumbled into a secret world. What are you doing out here? She asked softly, her concern cloaked in the nighttime ambience. Before he could respond, an impulse erupted within him, a need to reveal a part of himself. I'm trying to decide what it means to want more. How does one even begin? Her gaze sharpened, sensing the urgency in his words. By acknowledging the truth of your feelings, she replied. Whatever that truth is, Jake, you must define it for yourself. The resolve welled up stronger as he met her unwavering gaze. They lingered in the night air, a silent agreement shimmering between them. There was depth in this, a connection unraveling as they stood on the precipice of revelations. But even in this moment of clarity, the shadows loomed large. Jake knew decisions had to be made somewhere between duty and desire. Are you ready to face it all? Ashley asked, her voice cutting through the thick atmosphere, demanding an answer. And that was the final question that could unravel his world or set him free. The stakes had never felt higher. In that moment, Jake realized that things would never be the same. The time had come to confront his own truth head-on. Would he find the backbone to embrace it, or retreat to the familiar comforts of a world that stifled his very essence? Jake's gaze drifted toward the stars, their indifferent brilliance mocking the turmoil inside him. Ashley's question reverberated in his mind, each repetition amplifying his internal conflict. Was he truly ready to rip apart the fabric of his current life, or was he grasping at ideals he'd yet to fully understand? I don't know if I'm ready, he admitted, his voice low but clear. Not knowing is the first step, she returned, her tone encouraging yet firm. You can spend all your time in doubt, or you can start moving toward clarity. Jake shifted uncomfortably. The sharpness of her insight cut right to his core, exposing the rot hiding beneath layers of complacency. He felt more exposed with each passing moment, stripped bare of the stability he had painstakingly built around him. What if pursuing this clarity leads to loss? He countered, his thoughts bouncing between fear and a growing urge for authenticity. Loss is part of growth, Jake. What you lose may very well be what binds you to an existence devoid of meaning. Her words were like a beacon, illuminating the dark corners of his uncertainty. He pondered their implications. Could losing Jessica and the polished life they had crafted together pave the way for deeper happiness? The idea was both liberating and terrifying. Coupling ambition with a quest for a genuine self stoked an ambition he had buried deep. What if I fail? Jake questioned, the familiar specter of self-doubt rising. Failure is merely a shadow. It only exists when you choose to let it define you. What matters is your willingness to embrace growth. As he contemplated her words, the roar of party chatter dimmed, creating a pocket of stillness where only their voices echoed. What if pursuing something meaningful held the key to discovering talents he never recognized? There were passions entwined within him, waiting for the moment he dared to articulate them. What if I don't even know what I want? He whispered, vulnerability replacing bravado. Start with what you feel, not what you think you should feel. You'll find that connection more potent, she urged, leaning closer, her eyes searching his for any flicker of resolve. Meeting her gaze felt like peering into an abyss of possibility. He recognized a shared vulnerability, a sense of searching mirrored in her eyes. Was this the connection he had yearned for, one untethered by expectation? Or was it simply a distraction from facing the hard truths he had to confront? Okay, Jake finally stated, conviction flickering within his heart. I have to try. Ashley smiled, a soft, genuine expression that ignited a spark inside him. Then let us begin, she said gently. What are the first steps for you? Jake inhaled deeply as clarity settled like a warm blanket over his shoulders. What did he want? First, there was the pitch with Mark looming on his calendar. He would need to prepare, not just to impress an investor, but to redefine how he approached challenges. The soft touch of confidence was like a promise. Every detail bore potential lessons if he allowed himself to embrace them. Jake's thoughts danced to visions of founding his own company, one built on authenticity rather than mere profit, connecting innovative ideas with tangible impact. The possibility felt emboldening, yet daunting, a venture that would require not only his intellect but his heart, raw and unfiltered. I know I have to speak with Jessica, he said finally, his pulse quickening. It's time for an honest conversation about what we want. The smile on Ashley's face faltered for the briefest moment, revealing a flicker of concern. Be prepared for anything. Truth often leads to unexpected places. He nodded, an undercurrent of gratitude coursing through him. Courage felt unfamiliar but exhilarating. The cracks in his carefully constructed life were ready to expand into chasms that would lead him onward. You're stronger than you realize, Jake, Ashley reassured him. Remember that every decision shapes your path. The question is, how do you want to be defined in the end? As he stood there, contemplating her words, the enormity of the choices ahead pressed in around him, each bearing the potential for transformation. The taste of courage was mouth-watering, but the risk of loss lingered, tauntingly close. With a quick glance at Ashley, he felt the thrill of budding determination. The night felt electric, vibrancy enveloping him in ways he hadn't anticipated. Let us navigate this together, he declared, emboldened. Absolutely, she replied, eyes sparkling with an earnest commitment to his journey. But even as the path began to clarify, dark shadows loomed at the edges, impending conversations with Jessica, decisions that could fracture his life alongside the hidden possibility of something new to emerge. Would he summon the strength to confront those realities head-on? Jake inhaled once more, steeling himself for the storm. It was time to test his resolve, to hold the mirror up to his choices both present and past and confront the silence between duty and desire. The night was alive with promise, and yet a quiet fear curled in his stomach. He could feel the ground shifting beneath him, every step taken pulling him further from safety into the realm of confrontation. Tomorrow will be the day, he affirmed to himself, a burning yet tender hope flickering in his chest. Could he truly redefine himself amidst chaos? As the stars twinkled overhead, Jake knew the real trials were about to begin. Would courage be enough to navigate through the storm, or would he find himself swallowed whole by his past? The ultimate test awaited, one he wasn't sure he was prepared to face, but it was now or never. The morning light crept in through the window, casting a gentle glow across Jake's apartment. The stark reality of his impending conversation with Jessica surged in his mind, filling him with both anticipation and dread. As he rolled out of bed, the weight of the previous night's revelations lay heavy on his chest. Today was the day he would confront the truth of his life, unveil his aspirations, and dissect the fragile fabric of his relationship. He stood in front of the mirror, splashes of water awakening him, forcing clarity to replace hesitation. Preparing for the day felt like gearing up for battle. He needed a strategy not just to relay his thoughts effectively but to navigate the emotional terrain he was about to traverse. This conversation could either fracture everything or lead him down a path towards authenticity. Jake's first instinct was to don a mask, the one that had always worked well in social and professional encounters: polished, composed, unyielding. Yet, Ashley's encouragement echoed in his head: start with what you feel. A wave of vulnerability washed over him, a reminder that this wasn't just a pitch for an idea, it was a pitch for his truth, and the stakes couldn't be higher. He settled into a nearby cafe, its warm atmosphere providing a sense of comfort amidst the brewing storm within him. With coffee in hand, Jake began to outline his thoughts. Each point represented a fear, a hope, and the stark reality of what lay ahead. Doubts crept in, whispering distractions. What if Jessica didn't understand? What if she recoiled from the changes he wanted to embrace? Yet, he pushed through these fears, focusing instead on the potential for growth and the relief of authenticity. The sound of the door chimed, and Jake's heart raced as Jessica walked in. She looked radiant, but there was a distance in her eyes that struck him as both familiar and unsettling. Their life had been built on mutual respect and shared dreams, yet time had transformed those dreams into shadows of their former selves. "Hey," she greeted, her voice laced with warmth but shadowed by uncertainty. "Hey," he replied, gesturing for her to join him. As they settled into their seats, Jake evaluated the distance across the table, a metaphor for the emotional gap that had grown between them. He inhaled deeply, summoning courage. He couldn't allow the quaking of his confidence to derail the conversation. "I've been thinking a lot about us," he began, feeling the words tumble from his lips. The moment felt monumental, the weight of his admissions pressing against his chest. "About our future and what it means to be honest with ourselves." Jessica's brow furrowed slightly, caution lacing her expression. "What do you mean?" "I think we've been going through the motions," he replied, noting how the words tasted bitter yet freeing. "I want more out of life, more than what we've settled for or what we think we should want." She shifted uncomfortably, mirroring the tension within him. "Are you saying you want to break up?" "No," he stated firmly, shaking his head. "I'm saying I want to rebuild. I've realized I need to be true to myself, and I can't expect you to navigate this journey with me if I'm not upfront about my feelings. I don't want to lose you, but I can't stay trapped in this illusion either." Silence enveloped them, pregnant with unspoken words and emotions. At that moment, Jake was struck by how vulnerability and honesty could serve as bridges instead of barriers. People often feared the worst during transitions, but he was beginning to see that perhaps courage could offer unexpected connections even amid stormy seas. Jessica stared intently at him, her expression softening. "This is a lot to process," she finally said, her voice quieter yet steady. "I feel it too, the restlessness, but I need time to think about what all this means for us." Jake nodded, a sense of relief flooding through him. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a step towards something genuine. Acknowledging their shared discontent and the possibility of growth felt monumental. He recognized this conversation as the spark that could ignite a new chapter, one grounded in honesty rather than fear. As they left the cafe, both feeling the weight of their uncharted territory, Jake wondered about the possibilities that lay ahead. Had he truly taken the first step towards a potentially transformative journey, or had he merely opened a door to more complicated realities? As he walked alongside Jessica, he understood that true development often embarked through uncomfortable places, each step a testament to the courage of confronting the unknown. The air crackled with the tension of what could be, and he felt a surge of hope ignite in him. The real challenge awaited just beyond the horizon, a confrontation with the deepest aspects of his desires, ambitions, and the uncertainty that lay ahead. If he was brave enough to grasp at authenticity, what lay on the other side? Would he recognize the life waiting for him, one that could intertwine passion with purpose? As they approached the street corner, Jake's heart raced at the sight of the opportunity blooming before him. It was as if the universe was waiting, urging him to take the next brave step. Would he have the resolve to confront the shadows of his past while reaching for the light of his future? Jake's thoughts spun as he and Jessica walked side by side, a chasm of uncertainty growing wider with each stride. The threshold of their conversation lingered over them like a thick fog, a metaphor for the future they had yet to define. The world around him blurred, and with each step closer to the corner, he felt a turbulent mix of hope and trepidation. Would they take the leap together, or would they drift further apart in the currents of their shared silence? As they reached a crosswalk, Jake glanced over to see Jessica's expression etched in contemplation. It struck him that this journey required more than just a deep conversation. It required action, an evolution of heart and mind. He couldn't simply wait for things to resolve. He needed to engage in a more profound exploration of his ambitions and desires. His mind drifted back to the pep talk Ashley had given him earlier. You have to find what drives you, Jake. What ignites that fire inside? The words echoed in his head, pushing him closer to a realization that had been creeping in since that reflective morning. For years, he had played it safe, adhering to a life mapped with clear milestones but lacking genuine fulfillment. The anticipation of change quickened his pace. Knowing that he needed to instigate change, he plotted a course, a list of aspirations, the bare bones of an identity yet to unfold. Could he embrace artistic endeavors he had long shelved? The flicker of creativity pulsed within him, yearning for the freedom to express itself. Jake? Jessica's voice cut through his thoughts, pulling him back. Are you okay? Yeah, he replied, forcing a smile, yet the truth felt closer to the surface. I was just thinking, about everything. About taking steps towards what really matters to us. Her eyes brightened slightly, curiosity peaking as she stopped walking. What do you mean? Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. I want to explore things that excite me. I've neglected parts of myself for too long, not just for my own sake, but for us too. It's not enough to just exist, I want to thrive. As he spoke, he felt a shift. Each word felt like a pulse resonating through him, dispelling doubt and welcoming clarity. He sensed that this was not only an important declaration but the beginning of a collaborative journey, a chance for both of them to redefine the parameters of their relationship. I want you to explore who you are too, Jessica, he continued. If we're committed to being authentic, we should encourage and support each other's growth along the way. I need you by my side as I step into this new chapter, and I hope you can be true to yourself as well. A flicker of contemplation crossed Jessica's features, and Jake could see the gears turning in her mind. This was the crux of their relationship, the very foundation they had built together, authenticity and support, a test of mutual admiration and growth. Wow, she responded, her voice steady yet softer, a hint of vulnerability surfacing. That is a lot to consider. I guess I've also been feeling a pull towards something deeper, something I suppress because I don't want to create turbulence. Exactly, he said, invigorated by her admission. Let us be brave. Let us confront the aspects of our lives that no longer serve us. Embrace change, even if it's scary. As they resumed walking, Jake felt the gravity of what lay ahead. He would need to devise a plan, taking actionable steps to explore new possibilities, to discover hidden talents, and confront the discomfort of vulnerability he had often evaded, remaining anchored to the safety of routine. The challenge had transformed. It wasn't merely about their relationship but an invitation to personal evolution for both of them. But amid the flickering excitement, a creeping thought shadowed him. What if their explorations diverged? What if they ventured into paths that were no longer parallel? As they reached the end of the street, Jake's heart raced anew, looking ahead to the uncertain terrain before them. Would they find fulfillment hand in hand, or would they wander off to uncover their own truths, encountering obstacles that could fracture everything they had worked to build? The moment felt charged with both potential and peril, leaving him at the precipice of a realization. If he was to cultivate the life he desired, he would have to face not just the external challenges, but also the internal doubts that could threaten to derail his journey of rediscovery. Where would that truth ultimately lead him? The air around Jake crackled with the weight of impending possibilities, as uncertainty loomed large in the corners of his mind. His heart thumped heavily, not from fear alone but from an exhilarating conviction that sparked within him a resolve to pursue the undiscovered facets of himself. With Jessica by his side, he opened himself up to the world, even as doubts crept in like shadows. That evening, once they had parted ways, Jake sat on the edge of his bed, surrounded by remnants of his unfulfilled ambitions. Old sketchbooks and half-finished thoughts cluttered his desk, reminders of a creativity he had stifled for years. He could almost hear the echoes of Ashley's encouragement ringing in his ears. "You have to find what drives you." He realized he needed to seize this moment as an opportunity to reclaim those lost passions. Taking a deep breath, Jake flipped open one of the sketchbooks, pages yellowed with time. Each sketch was a fragment, an unpolished shard of what he had wanted to express. As he thumbed through them, a sense of urgency stirred within him. He reached for a pencil, the weight of it in his hand igniting something dormant within him, the fire that Ashley had implored him to locate. With each stroke, his anxiety morphed into determination. He poured his energy into sketches of vibrant landscapes and abstract concepts. Hours slipped by unnoticed, consumed by the act of creation. But amidst the joy of rediscovery, an unsettling thought lingered. Was this new avenue a shared journey, or a solitary path that might lead to a divide with Jessica? The following morning, fueled by a restless energy, he mapped out a list of goals. They were personal, deeply rooted in the desires that had long been overshadowed by the weight of expectation. He couldn't ignore the ambition to delve deeper into his art. Yet, alongside it resided the need for a supportive partnership with Jessica that embraced their individual journeys. Breaking the cycle of his past behaviors would demand courage. It required clarity and honesty in opening up to Jessica about his aspirations while also inviting her to express her ambitions. Out of this realization, he drafted a proposal for a shared project, a creative endeavor they could tackle together, a tangible representation of their growth. As Jake stood before the mirror, preparing for their next conversation, he felt the familiar flutter of nerves in his stomach. But he was driven this time, no more wandering through life without purpose. He practiced the words he would share, aiming to convey a message not just of aspirations but of partnership, wanting her to see that he valued her vision as much as his own. Arriving at their favorite cafe, he spotted Jessica already seated, engrossed in her notebook. The sun filtered through the window, casting a warm glow around her, and his heart tamped down the familiar anxiety as he approached her. "Hey," he greeted, a tentative excitement bubbling within him. "I've been working on something I wanted to share." Her eyes lit up, drawing him into a discussion that felt more profound than their usual exchanges. This was the moment his intention to merge their paths had to resonate. As he presented his ideas, he noticed her brows furrowing in concentration, her interest peaking with each passing moment. But just as the conversation unfolded, an unwelcome thought surged through him. What if she rejected the notion of collaboration, unwilling to intertwine her journey with his? What if she sought independence that veered away from his vision? Each proclamation from his lips was met with a shifting expression on her face, a reflection of both intrigue and fear as she pondered his proposition. Jake couldn't shake the tightening in his chest. The hope that pulsed between them was tinged with the potential for misunderstanding. "Jake," she began slowly, her voice steady yet laced with uncertainty. "This is so much to think about. I love the idea, but I worry. The word hung heavily between them, a harbinger of the fears they both navigated. He sensed the jagged fracture beneath their ambitions, the precarious balancing act between unity and individuality. Yet it was this uncertainty that made him yearn for clarity. As their conversation reached a pivotal moment, he realized that the challenges they faced might be as complex as they were profound. How could they embark on their journeys while supporting one another? The potential for creative brilliance loomed ahead of them, but as Jake glanced into Jessica's eyes, he knew they stood at a crossroads. Would they unfurl their wings, drawing strength from one another, or would their paths diverge, the shared dreams slipping through the cracks of their unspoken fears? Something new must emerge from this vulnerability. And he was determined to uncover it. As anticipation surged in his veins, he prepared for the next inquiry and exploration into the boundaries they needed to negotiate in order to nurture their dreams without losing sight of each other. What awaited them in that uncertainty would be a testament to their resolve. Jake's heart raced, the weight of Jessica's worry settling heavily between them. This was the moment where clarity must shatter their uncertainty. He had envisioned this conversation as an opportunity for connection, yet it felt like they stood on the precipice of an unnameable divide. The cafe, once a sanctuary where ideas flowed freely, now felt confining, the walls closing in as he sensed her hesitance. "Jessica," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "I understand that this might feel like a lot. But I want you to know that your dreams matter to me just as much as mine. We can build something great together, but it needs to be built on open communication." His words hung in the air, a mixture of hope and desperation. She looked down, biting her lip as she traced the edge of her notebook. Jake could almost see the wheels turning in her mind, the weight of past experiences colliding with the possibilities of the future. He fought the urge to fill the silence with more words, knowing that her hesitation required space rather than pressure. Finally, Jessica looked up, a flicker of determination glimmering in her eyes. "You're right, Jake. I want us to thrive together. But I can't help feeling that I might lose my voice in this. I have my own path, and I fear it'll get lost in our creative journey." The words stung, but they resonated with something deep within him. Here lay the crux of their conflict, the challenge of balancing individual aspirations with a shared vision. He needed to confront this head-on. What if we incorporate our paths into this project? What if it became a space for both our voices to be heard? Her gaze softened, and the tension shifted just a fraction. "What would that look like?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. Jake seized the chance. "Think about blending our artistic styles. Your writing, my illustrations. A visual story that reflects both of our experiences." The image unfolded in his mind like a vivid canvas, a narrative where their strengths intertwined seamlessly. Jessica nodded slowly, her brow relaxing as she considered the idea. Yet he could still see the flickers of thought and uncertainty. "But how do we ensure it doesn't turn into a project where one of us dominates?" she questioned, her voice a soft tremor. "We can establish boundaries," Jake replied, his mind racing to prepare the framework. "Weekly check-ins, a set schedule for contributions, an agreement on the direction as we progress. We need to be accountable to each other, to keep our individual aspirations in the forefront." She leaned back, arms crossed thoughtfully, the tension in her posture easing slightly. "That sounds fair." Then, an unexpected smile broke through the contemplative cloud surrounding her, an unexpected warmth that energized the space between them. The moment was electric, a flicker of possibility guiding them into uncharted territory. This felt like an evolution, not just of their creative ambition, but of their relationship in its entirety. They were moving from fear of divergence to a shared journey of collaboration, reclaiming pieces of themselves in the process. However, as they began to sketch out their plans, Jake's mind flashed with remnants of doubt. Could they truly navigate the fragility of their connection amidst the swirl of individual ambition and collective creativity? Would these goals fortify rather than fracture what they had? That question pressed at the back of his mind as they pored over ideas, sketches, and outlines. The stakes had never felt higher. It was a leap into vulnerability, one that could reshape their identities both together and apart. Just as the flicker of excitement began to pulse between them, fate intervened. A familiar figure entered the cafe, casting a long shadow over their moment of alliance. Jake's heart sank as recognition dawned, an unwelcome intrusion on the burgeoning trust they were trying to build. Would this encounter derail their budding partnership, or offer an unexpected opportunity for resolution? The air thickened with the weight of possibilities yet uncharted. Jake's heart raced as he recognized the figure entering the cafe. Jessica's eyes flicked to his in a mixture of surprise and apprehension. It was Mark, his business partner, bounding over with that exuberant confidence Jake had always admired, but now felt trapped between. The warmth of their earlier conversation threatened to fizzle under the weight of businesslike formality. "Jake!" There you are. I've been looking for you, Mark announced, his voice booming in the cozy cafe. He offered a quick, cursory glance in Jessica's direction, then focused back on Jake, oblivious to the tension that had just begun to dissolve. Hey Mark, Jake responded, forcing a smile, even as a flicker of irritation coursed through him. Couldn't he just one moment be theirs without interference? He felt the air draft around them tighten, the coziness receding like a tide. I was just saying to the team how solid you've been working on that new pitch. They were impressed. Mark continued, his enthusiasm a stark contrast to the uncertainty knitting Jake's brow. We should finalize our strategy. Investors are eager to see growth, and we need you shining in your role. Jake took a breath to steady himself. This conversation could either derail their moment or be a catalyst for transparency in his business life, and that's what he needed now. He turned to Jessica, then back to Mark, deciding to confront both sides of his evolving identity head-on. Actually, Mark, I'm glad we ran into you, Jake began, his voice taking on a newfound firmness. I wanted to talk about the upcoming pitch, but I also need to discuss some personal aspirations I've been reevaluating. A puzzled look crossed Mark's face. Personal aspirations? What does that mean? Before Jake could tackle the subject with more clarity, Jessica interjected, her gaze unwavering and resolute. What Jake means is, he's looking to step outside the traditional boundaries we've set for success. Mark blinked, clearly unprepared for this turn. You mean you want to explore your artistic side? Jake nodded, feeling her support bolster his resolve. Yes. Art isn't just a hobby to me. It's been a neglected part of who I am for too long. I want to incorporate that into my professional life and create something more fulfilling, and I'd like to start that by working on a creative collaboration with Jessica. Silence filled the air, punctuated only by the buzz of conversations around them. Mark looked torn between amusement and confusion, the tension building palpably. You're serious? You think this is going to help with your track record in whatever this project is? Jake's pulse quickened, but he pressed forward. It's more than just a project, it represents a commitment to authenticity. I've realized that real success isn't just measured in numbers but in fulfillment and connection. I want that in my life, not only for my career but personally with Jessica as well. Jessica's expression softened, pride welling in her eyes as she allowed his conviction to sink in. But Mark furrowed his brow, skepticism clouding his otherwise enthusiastic demeanor. Well, I guess that's interesting. But don't you think you could risk losing focus? You have your reputation to think about. Jake felt a flare of frustration at the lingering doubts, but he met Mark's gaze with unwavering confidence. I've been losing focus by pretending to be someone I'm not, Mark. Jessica's partnership will finally allow me to explore my true potential. We can add depth to our project's creativity and passion, bring fresh ideas, and that's more likely to resonate with investors than just numbers. Mark opened his mouth, clearly wanting to protest further, but Jessica chimed in with a steady voice that introduced a sense of balance. No great success was ever achieved in a vacuum, and I believe that investing in our genuine selves will yield genuine results. Creativity breathes life into numbers, Mark. Mark's features softened, then shifted into a contemplative expression. All right, I'm hearing you both. But let us ensure this doesn't distract from our business objectives. Our investors need to see results. Jake felt a flicker of hope as Mark relented ever so slightly, yet there remained a tension in commitment. I will ensure my work remains focused, but understand that my engagement in this collaborative project will inspire more innovation, he promised, feeling a wave of relief course through him. Fine. But I need to see a detailed plan if this is going to work, Mark conceded, the hesitance in his demeanor starting to melt into cautious excitement. And Jake, you know our primary goal is growth, right? Right. But I'm more invested in personal growth too. Success is not just about the bottom line, it's about holistic satisfaction. As Mark absorbed that concept, the air felt lighter. It was a liberation, a tentative step toward unleashing the storm of creativity within him. He had learned that balancing authenticity in business wouldn't be easy, but it was crucial to his identity. With Mark's attention slightly diverted, Jake turned to Jessica, his nerves replaced with exhilaration. What do you think? There's something here, SNT there? Her smile illuminated the moment as she nodded slowly. Yes. This could be the start of not just a journey for you but for us, too. Feeling empowered, Jake realized he had faced the shadows of doubt with honesty, turning them into a stepping stone toward building what mattered most, a life defined not by a societal script but by the harmony of ambition and connection. The competition of their lives, the expectations, and the investments intertwined with creativity, it was all shifting. As they wrapped up their impromptu meeting, the world outside the cafe glimmered with the promise of new endeavors and possibilities. Jake knew that challenges awaited, but the moment had marked a shift, a transformational leap toward authenticity. Gathering his belongings, he felt a pulse of resolve echoing in his heart. This was just the beginning, a new chapter was unfurling before him, brilliantly colored by the possibility of passionate pursuits. He was no longer divided, he had stepped forward as a whole person, ready to embrace whatever came next. And in that moment of clarity, a message echoed within him: true empowerment was at hand. The creative union had begun.